Wonderful to see so many people out there with an interest in civic affairs. My name is Aubrey Jew, and I'll be the moderator of this panel, Economic Policy in the Future, Challenges for the New President. The way we will work this is we will have each of our panelists talk to you for a little bit about what they think is important and interesting. And then after both of our panelists have gone, we will open it up for audience questions. All right, so let me introduce our two distinguished speakers today. First, we have Congressman Alan Boyd, who's been serving since 1997 from Florida's 2nd Congressional District. For the past 12 years, Congressman Boyd has been a leader of the Congressional Blue Dog Coalition, a group of 51 Democratic members of the House of Representatives who advocate fiscal responsibility in the federal budgeting process. He oversees the budgets of multiple agencies, including the Treasury Department, Internal Revenue Service, and the FDIC, and the judicial branch. In addition to the subcommittees on defense and financial services, Congressman Boyd continues to serve on the Agriculture, Rural Development, and Food and Drug Administration and related agencies subcommittee of the House Appropriations Committee. A fifth-generation farmer, Boyd graduated from Florida State University in 1969 and served his country in Vietnam. To this day, he continues to oversee the family farm operations on land that has been in his family for 5 generations. We are also pleased to have Congresswoman Suzanne Kosmas. Congresswoman Kosmas is a former state representative and a successful small business owner and has served her community for over 30 years. Kosmas was elected to the Florida House of Representatives in 1996 and was re-elected 3 times, serving 4 consecutive terms before being term limited. Kosmas is the owner of Prestige Properties, a real estate company located in New Smyrna Beach since 1979. She's been active in her community for over 30 years, served as the chair of the board for the United Way of Volusia County. She's also served on the executive board of many local agencies, including United Way Women's Initiative, Atlantic Center for the Arts, Friends of Spruce Creek Preserve, and Southeast Volusia Habitat for Humanity. Southeast Volusia Habitat for Humanity recently recognized Kosmas for the leadership in initiating the first woman-built house in New Smyrna Beach, constructed for a single mother with children. Congresswoman Kosmas has lived in New Smyrna Beach since 1973 and has 4 children, Mike, Paul, David, and Kristen. We'll now turn it over to Congressman Kosmas. Please welcome our guest.
Thank you, Aubrey. And good morning, everyone. Let me start by thanking Lou Frey and all of his team, Doug Dobson, all the folks who are involved in the Lou Frey Institute, making it work. I've worked with the Frey Institute now for a number of years, and I know of the wonderful work they do, particularly on civic engagement and educating our students, young people, about civic involvement. It's very, very important. I think it's more important today than it's ever been, given the events of the last few months and what's going on in this country, and understanding our economic model and what we have to do to get back on track. One of the things that I've been asked to do this morning is talk about the budgeting process in Washington, D.C. That's kind of a dirty subject, kind of a messy subject, if you will. But President Obama obviously has walked into a very tough situation from the budget perspective. And I want to discuss that a little bit and my ideas about some of the things we have to do to get back on track with our federal budget. One of the things Aubrey may not have mentioned is that I do serve on the Budget Committee, so I had an opportunity to be involved in the writing of the House version of the budget resolution, which is working its way now through the Senate into a conference mode, so those differences can be resolved. One of the things that I know about budgeting, and I know those of you that have taken any business classes know about budgeting, is the purpose of a budget is to try to put down on paper what you expect your revenues to be and what you expect your expenses to be, and see what the bottom line is. Did I do that? When I said bottom line, it all blew up. See what the bottom line will be, and it's critically important that you, when you write that budget, that you, as accurately as you can, put on paper all of the expected expenses and expected revenues. So it paints as clear as possible picture of what the actual situation will be. And one of the important things you need to know about the budget that's working its way through the legislative process now is that it does that. And it's the first time in 8 years that it's done that. And let me tell you what I mean. For the previous 8 years, 7 or 8 years, when the budget resolutions, when those numbers were presented to Congress by the President, there were some very critical parts of the expense side that were left off. I'll give you an example. All of the war cost in Iraq and Afghanistan since the invasion of Iraq have been left out of the budgeting picture when it comes to writing the budget for the United States government. All of the costs that are associated with Medicare that related to certain corrections that have to be made in provider reimbursements, physician reimbursements that everybody in town, everybody in the country knew we were going to do, they were left off. The cost of the alternative minimum tax. Now, many of you in this room may not know what the alternative minimum tax is, but there are some who are scattered around that are professional and file an income tax return, do understand, and that has been left off for the last 7 or 8 years, the fix. It's about a $75 billion annual fix. Other things like disaster, budgeting for disasters, budgeting for the estate tax problems that we have and created in the 2001 economic package, all of those have been left off. So it's my contention for the last 7 or 8 years, you had a budget that really didn't mean anything. It didn't give you a picture of what the real situation was. President Obama sent Congress a budget which listed all of those things. Said, here's the deal. You know, here's what the war is going to cost. Here's what it's going to cost to fix the Medicare physician payments deal. Here's what we need to put in the budget for disasters, because we know we're going to have hurricanes and floods and tornadoes and earthquakes, and we're going to have to respond to them as a nation. We know we're going to have to fix the alternative minimum tax, so let's budget for it, because that's what a budget's supposed to do. So when you put all those numbers down now, the picture is not very pretty. I have to tell you, it is not a pretty picture at all. And all of you have heard on the television reports and radio talk shows about how bad it is. And it is true, it is not pretty. But the fact is that we are in an economic free fall. That exacerbates this problem in a large way. And so, but we can't fix this problem until we're honest with ourselves and with the American people about how bad it is and what we have to do to get out of it. We can't fix it overnight. It's going to take years to figure out how to make the revenues and the expenditures to balance again like they were only 8 years ago in January 2001. So, but we can get there if we work hard and work together. Now, what is in this budget that we're looking at today? I think there's some critical things that the new president has brought to the table that we really need to talk about. The first thing is of course, is fixing the economy. And how do we do that? Representative Kosmas is going to speak of the stimulus package and talk a little bit about those efforts through the stimulus packages that we have done or may do. One of the things that the president feels very strongly about, and I believe he's right, is that the health care problems of this nation are at the very core of the economic problems that we have. You have a health care system that many would claim provides the best quality health care in the world, and it does. I agree with that. But the problem is that we have 48 million Americans, over 15% of our population, who cannot access that health care. they can't get into it. So what good is a quality health care system that folks can't get into because it's too costly, because they can't afford insurance? The other problem that we have is that the health care costs collectively in this nation are rising at a rate of 4 to 5% above inflation. Now, any of you have taken an accounting course or math course know it doesn't take very long. That deal doesn't work very long. It really destroys your economy over a period of years when you have now in the neighborhood of 16 or 17% of your gross domestic product going toward health care, when only a few years ago it was in the single digits. So it's a problem that has to be solved, and the new president is focused on it like a laser, I can tell you. And he wants to do two things. He wants to create access for everybody. That is a universal plan. I didn't say a single-payer government-run plan. I said a universal plan. So, and he wants to control cost. So you have to do those two things. You have to create a healthcare system that everybody can get into, and you can control the cost and keep them from rising at the rapid rate they have been over the last 20 or 30 years. So healthcare is number one. Secondly on his agenda would be the energy situation. I think most of us would agree that climate change is a real problem. Some people may not, but generally I believe if you don't, you probably, you probably really don't want to believe it. You're not looking at all the facts. So climate change is a problem as we get more and more people on this earth. It's going to continue to be a problem. We have to figure out how to deal with the things that are causing the climate change, and that's related to our energy problem. This country, with 5% of the world's population, consumes about 25% of the world's energy. The base of that energy consumption is carbon-based. It's oil mostly. We make gasoline out of oil because that's the cheapest commodity to do it, or has been. But we don't control very much of the oil in the world. We only control about 2% of the world's oil reserves, and this country consumes about 25% of the world's oil. So we got to find a different way to produce energy, and that's a very important thing that the president will work on. Thirdly is the education system. Everybody knows that to have a great economy like we have, you have to make sure that each generation is better educated than their parents. We have done that in the past. I'm a little bit, many of us are concerned about the future of that, and President Obama is also and wants to focus on that, both at the very earliest levels and at the college level. And fourthly, so he's got those three things on his plate: health care, energy or climate change, education, and fourthly is fiscal responsibility. And that's one that you heard Aubrey talk about, my involvement with a group called the Blue Dogs, that we have really focused on as a group. The whole notion of, if you're going to have a government and your government's going to provide services and provide programs, the American people ought to be told what they're going to cost and asked to pay for them. We can't continue to go borrow the money from China or some other country who has excess cash and send you guys, you young people, the bill. Because if we continue to do that, your tax rates will be in the 75 to 80% range when you get to be my age. And I think that's very selfish of my generation to do that. So again, healthcare reform, energy, education, and fiscal responsibility, we have to get back to paying our bills and making the bottom line balance. So with that, Aubrey, I will stop and turn it over to, let me also say that I'm not going to turn it over yet. Let me say about this lady here. I didn't get to serve with her in the state legislature. She came right after I left, but I watched her, her career, and then of course when she ran for Congress and won the congressional race, I was very delighted about that for a number of reasons. And I will tell you that I'm very delighted to be with her in her congressional district this morning. Suzanne.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for those kind words, Alan, and also my thanks to our hosts here, the Lou Frey Institute. Lou, it's good to see you. And for all of those of you who are here in attendance, I congratulate you for your interest in public affairs. And after all, this is your future that Alan and I are working to improve and to make better as members of Congress. I want to welcome all of you to my district as well. As you know, I was only recently elected, and today, in fact, is my 100th day of having been in the U.S. Congress. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. And as Aubrey suggested to you, I actually live in New Smyrna Beach, where I've lived for 35 years, raised my family, run a small business for over 30 years, owned and operated a small business for over 30 years. I have 4 grown children and 9 grandchildren, and when I got elected, everyone was confused. Do we say Congresswoman, Congressperson, Congressman? My grandchildren decided it would be Congress Grammy. So that's my nickname, and well-earned, I believe. Again, this is a great opportunity for me to visit with you and to hear from you, but also to tell you that, echoing some of the comments made by Alan, we are working on an agenda that is designed to do 2 things. I think, first of all, to get us out of the crisis that we're in at the moment, but also to move us into a future that will be promising for you, economically, environmentally, educationally, and with regard to healthcare, as he suggested. And this is the agenda that the administration has put forward, and the same agenda that we as Congress are attempting to assist him in putting forth. As you know, we are in the worst economic crisis this country has seen since the Great Depression. Jobs, particularly in Florida, we have unemployment and underemployment at an all-time high. We have foreclosures at an all-time high and rising daily. So the crisis that we came into during this congressional session is unlike any precedented in my lifetime, for sure. And so we began with major challenges and have hit the ground running, so to speak. Many people say, as a freshman, what's it like in Washington? And the saying up there is, it's like trying to drink water from a fire hose. But I say it's more like being on the fastest treadmill I've ever been on. And by the way, the angle of the treadmill is like this, because you're really working fast on issues that are so critical to this nation at this very moment that we have a huge responsibility. Now, I will say that I am extremely honored and excited to be part of that, despite the daunting challenges before us, and I'm humbled also to serve as your congressperson. One of the first things, of course, that we did in Congress was to pass what is called the Recovery and Reinvestment Act, known as the stimulus plan, in order to try to do a couple of things that would alleviate the crisis situation that we're in. And we think we've begun to see that there are some positive signs, but all of us know we have a long way to go. Again, the measures in the stimulus plan are designed to do a couple of different things. Inject a short-term boost in the economy by actually creating jobs, whether it's education, whether it's healthcare, or whether it's in alternative energy. These are areas in which the stimulus bill has directed a lot of money. And as Congressman Boyne said, they are very consistent with the long-term plan of making an investment in a quality future for you, your children, and their children, where we can reduce our reliance on foreign oil and on oil, which is a finite resource, and use your energies, your brains, your entrepreneurial spirit to create alternative ways to get the energy that we need to run our economy and to make this a cleaner place to live. So the alternative energy component for me is a win-win-win. We win economically because we create a whole new generation of opportunities for you to think about, invent, create, and build alternative ways to provide energy to this country. We win on the environmental side because we ultimately will be able to reduce our carbon footprint on the earth and, again, improve the quality of life environmentally for you, your children, and their children. And we also have the opportunity, if we do this right, to make corrections in our national security decisions, which sometimes are based on the need for oil. And so this is a very important component of what we're trying to do in the alternative energy field. I never like to go without saying that because I think it's very important that you recognize that these are long-term investments for the future and for the quality of life. As Congressman Boyd suggested, there's also a huge investment in education in this Recovery and Reinvestment Act. In fact, each of the school districts in the state of Florida is currently receiving millions of dollars, it varies from district to district, of course, directly to the school boards in order to provide opportunities for them to continue to give a quality education, quality public education to the next generation. Whereas the economic crisis has hit them hard, this gives them an opportunity to maintain teachers and to maintain classes for K through 12 schools. It also invests in early learning, Head Start, and provides some opportunities for you to get Pell Grants and to get loans for college with lower interest rates by cutting out the middleman. So there is a major focus on education, from early education all the way through secondary education, and the stimulus plan has opportunities for everyone in that regard. The other thing, and again this was mentioned by Congressman Boyd, is the health IT component for the stimulus plan, which has $19 billion in it to provide an opportunity for the healthcare system across the whole strata of whether it's doctors, hospitals, UCF Medical School, or others who are interested in providing quality care to get on the same sheet of music so that your records are accessible and transferable from one place to another, from one kind of institution to another. The President has made a commitment to this. Again, I think it's an investment in the future which will provide an opportunity for healthcare to be more efficient, more effective, more economical, and also will give us an opportunity to reduce costs that are lost to duplications and or fraud and abuse. So I think the mission is clearly established. It's consistent with the budget as proposed by the President, and he has laid the groundwork for all of these initiatives in a way that is very consistent with his commitments before being elected. And I think it's nice to see that in 100 days we are well on the way to meeting the promises, at least laying the groundwork for meeting the promises that were made by this administration. And I'm proud to support them in those efforts because they have a vision for the future. And that obviously includes you. This has been, again, a very exciting time for me. I have been honored to serve on the Financial Services Committee. Again, it's an honor on the one hand, huge challenge on the other because of the fact that our major crisis at the moment is our economic crisis. So on the Financial Services Committee, what we are looking to do and have initiated steps to take place are to, first of all, stabilize the financial markets. Secondly, to put some oversight and regulatory reform into the markets that formerly didn't have those breaks in place that would have perhaps prevented the crisis which has now touched everyone's life. Everyone in this country, I think, has been touched in some way, shape, or form by the effects of this economic crisis. So this committee is at the core of trying to, first of all, assist in stabilizing the economy, and secondly, in moving forward with regulatory reform, oversight, putting into effect a situation in which we will not find ourselves in the future dealing either with systemic risk, which essentially means an institution is too big to fail, and therefore we as taxpayers have to go out and shore up an industry that has been running rampant, really, without control for quite a few years. So this is a very, very important component of getting us out of the crisis, but also moving us forward so we don't fall into that situation again. That's been a very important part of what I've been trying to do in Congress. As you know, the jobs and foreclosures are, as I said before, especially in Florida, a very serious issue. And if we do not stabilize the financial institutions to the point where credit begins to flow again, then people will not be able to take advantage of the opportunity to buy a new home. By the way, there is an $8,000 credit for a first home buyer. If any of you are thinking of buying a home, this is a great time to do it. and the prices are right, and the credits are good, and the interest rates are low. These are all incentives put in place in order to try to give a boost to the economy, and I hope, again, if you have an opportunity to take advantage of it, you will. For the record, I no longer own the real estate company. I rolled it over to the next generation, so to speak. But so on the Financial Services Committee, we've been challenged, and I have been honored to work on trying to figure out that oversight and regulatory reform, and also to stabilize the institutions that have been at the root cause of this crisis. I also serve on science and technology. And for me, this is very exciting. I know nothing about science, but the Science and Technology Committee, for me, was a way in which to connect myself to those who are making the decisions in Washington, including myself, specifically because I have the Kennedy Space Center in the district as well. And certainly had the honor to come here to UCF and see the participation that you all had in a robotics competition here, and recognizing that science and technology are the wave of the future. For those of you here in the audience, you should be thinking clearly that while Wall Street may have been the path last graduating class, you should be looking perhaps at, again, alternative energies or other opportunities. And so I'm pleased to say that I serve on that committee and that we're working hard. Brevard County, as you know, has been struggling with the foreclosures and job losses like everyone else, but there's the impending gap for jobs between the end of the shuttle launches, whenever that might occur, and the beginning of the new program called Constellation. And that presents a major problem for me in terms of part of my district and some in this area as well who will be affected by the potential job loss there. But we are working very hard with the administration and leadership to try to find some solutions to mitigate that gap and minimize the numbers of jobs lost there. Recently this week, I did have a chance to meet with some of the dean of the UCF Medical School, and I'm going back to the healthcare issue that was talked about earlier, and I was very, very excited to see that, I don't know whether any of you here are medical school students or plan to be, but the opportunity here in Central Florida with the Veterans Medical Center, the UCF Medical School, the Nemours Children Center, and the Burnham Institute being co-located in a way that provides for a major sort of mecca of medical technology and science and education is very, very exciting to me, and I hope it is to you as well. I'm really looking forward to continuing to work on advancing that in any way that's possible. Again, I'm pleased to be here. I'm honored to be in Washington as the congressperson from this area. I would say that one of the most interesting things that's happened to me in the 100 days. Well, I've had the good luck, really, the fun of flying on Air Force One. We flew together with the president. I spoke to the astronauts from the White House on the International Space Station. But one of the most touching things that actually has happened to me was in the very first days that I was in Washington. I was by myself and I was walking through the Capitol, and didn't know where I was going exactly, so I'm wandering around a little bit and enjoying that. And I found a little stairwell in the corner, that kind of dark and round, that went up like this, and decided to take it up. And so from the first floor to the second floor, I went on a set of stairs that I found out were actually the set that had survived the fire of 1812 and still continue to exist in the Capitol. And the treads, of course, are all sort of concave. And so every step that I took up those stairs, and I try to take it whenever it's possible for me to do so, was literally touched by our forefathers in the Capitol. And for me, that was a really moving experience, and something, as I said, I try to do frequently to remind myself of the awesome responsibility, the real true honor that we have to be your representatives in Washington, and to remember that this is a great country with a great history of doing the right thing for the right reasons. And again, I'm just truly honored to be your representative and to say to you that if you out there are interested in public service and politics, go for it. It's really a fabulous way to give back to this community, which has given all of us so much freedom, so much opportunity, and the privilege of being an American citizen. And I say it with pride. I appreciate very much that I have been given this honor, and I hope you'll look forward to doing the same in your careers.
All right, we'll now open it up for questions. We have a couple students with microphones roaming the hall, so if you have questions, raise your hand. I will recognize you, and we will get to you. I see a hand shooting up over here on my left. If we have a, there we go. Back that way.
Hi, this is kind of addressed to both of you since you both mentioned the topic, but Florida is currently ranked 48th in the nation as public school funding goes, and with the least amount is the 48th as far as the amount of money going towards our public schools per student. I was wondering, with all of the budget things that we were talking about, why even though how much money is being sent for education out of the stimulus package, and then how much of I'm trying to think how to phrase this, how is the current congressional and congressional leaders of Florida going to try and help increase the budget for the different schools so schools can actually get, books and stuff?
As I said before, the stimulus package that comes from the federal government includes direct allocations to each school district in the state of Florida. For example, Orange County is due to receive about $44 million for the public education system here. There is also within the stimulus package a stabilization fund of $2.7 billion that is set aside for the state of Florida. Your question is a very good one because Florida is having to apply for a waiver in order to receive that $2.7 billion of stabilization, 81% of which will go towards public education. The reason that Florida is having to apply for a waiver is because it's one of 3 states in the nation that didn't meet its maintenance of effort requirement, which basically says if you're not spending the same amount per pupil at least that you were spending in 2006, then you're not automatically entitled to this additional funds from this additional amount of money from the federal government. So we initiated within our delegation a letter which would provide us the waiver. If granted by the Secretary of Education in Washington, then Florida will be receiving an additional $2.7 billion that will be distributed among the school districts. As you know, the federal government only provides about 4 or 5% of total funding used for public schools. It is generated locally and distributed at the state level. So the state legislature is actually the body responsible for the annual appropriations for education. I hope that answered. Go ahead.
Thank you. And Representative, is that on? Can you hear me? Is that on? Okay. Representative Kosmas and I both served in the state legislature, and in the state legislature, we, along with the other folks who serve there, have the responsibility of raising the money and funding, along with the local counties, the school districts, for public education. And as she said, I think in the neighborhood of 94, 95% of the funds going into the public school system in Florida are the responsibility of local and state funding, come from funding sources local and state. There's a reason to do that. You want to keep those decisions and that curriculum structure is at the lowest level of government as possible, and is not something that under our system of government that the federal government has had the responsibility for doing, with a few exceptions. So I think it's important to understand that the real problem here has been the failure of the state legislature to properly fund the education system. And I might recommend to Lou Frey for his next institute that you bring some state legislators up here and let these folks ask them that question. As to that, you know, the billions of dollars in that stimulus package that we said we want to send to the schools to fill that gap that the state legislatures are not doing, all we asked was that they not cut below a level of in 2005 and 2006, and Florida didn't even meet that criteria. And so now the governor is going to have to go to Washington and ask for a waiver of those rules. And it's just, you know, personally, I don't understand it. Representative Kosmas and I both have signed that letter that asked for the waiver, but you know, there has to be some responsibility here on the local and state governments.
I think we agree on that.
All righty, thank you. All right, other questions? Here, we'll go maybe to the middle this time. Here, the gentleman on the end in the red shirt. There's a microphone for you.
This is for Congressman Allen. I actually have two questions. One is, how do you feel about the $1 trillion in electronic money being added into the economy by the Federal Reserve? And also, what kind of benefits would that provide, and what kind of opportunities would that create?
The $1 trillion being added into the economy, you mean that was put in there for the financial institutions? I'm a little confused about
Which $1 trillion?
which $1 trillion. Yeah, which $1 trillion? Good point.
Man, how many trillions were they? I mean,
ultimately, this is taxpayers' money. I don't care whether the Federal Reserve makes the decision, or the president, his administration makes a decision, or Congress makes a decision. If that money is spent, ultimately, it's the money of the taxpayers of this country, or in some cases, the people of the Republic of China, where we went and borrowed the money. So I think it's a responsibility, whether it be Federal Reserve or administration or Congress, to make sure that we do it right, and we have a long-term plan which gets us back on some path to fiscal sanity and fiscal responsibility.
All right, more questions. To be fair, we'll try to go to the right section over here. How about the gentleman in the gray shirt there with the glasses? Sorry, Jenny, we're going to keep you hopping, running around the floor here.
My question is for both of you. Under the No Child Left Behind Act of 2001, schools that do not make adequate test scores receive less funding. You say that we're going to get funding specifically for Florida, but under the current legislation, that funding won't go to the schools that desperately need it. What are you guys doing to fix that issue?
I'm going to let you address it since you were there when the No Child Left Behind was put in place.
Representative Kosmas says she's going to let me go first on that.
He was there when the No Child Left Behind was passed.
And that's right. She said I was there. You're talking about the AYP provision, the Adequate Yearly Progress provision, which is part of the No Child Left Behind. Well, first of all, let me go back and say that was one of the very first pieces of legislation that President Bush, when he got elected in 2001, pushed, was a No Child Left Behind. And we all thought it was a great piece of legislation. He worked across the aisle in the House and the Senate, Democrats and Republicans. This mic is kicking in and out, I think, so I'll try to speak loudly. But one of the things that happened over the years, after the legislation was put in place, it never was funded. I mean, there was a certain amount of funding that had to be appropriated by Congress to make sure that the No Child Left Behind was implemented, and the states had the money that they needed to do the things they needed to do. But the money was never asked for by the administration in the next budget cycle. So I don't think it's fair to say that No Child Left Behind got a really fair shake at being successful, because it was not funded. Now, as to the AYP, what Representative Kosmas says is true. That in Congress I was there when we wrote that. But what we did was give the states the flexibility and the leeway to write AYP rules in the way that they each saw fit individually. And I can tell you right now that Arkansas, for example, in the first 3 years, had 95% of their students in schools meeting AYP. And in the state of Florida, because of the way the state, I think it was the administration. I don't think it was you guys. I think it was
I wasn't there anyway, but
okay.
I only had to survive FCAT.
Because of the way the rules were written on adequate yearly progress, the first year, we didn't have one school district in this state make adequate yearly progress. Now, I think some of those changes have been made, and we have made a little progress, but we still have some problems related to No Child Left Behind. But again, it was a combination of the federal law giving the state great flexibility in the way they wrote the rules about how you would meet AYP.
Okay, time for more questions. All right, how about over on the very right? Yes, on the very right in the white shirt. Glasses, there we go.
Oh, I know.
Thank you. All right. Can I, this is a question for both of you. We are, the people who were talking before said that we're moving out of Iraq like this year, and right now we're going to be going to Pakistan. Also, I've also heard on the news that we're having a lot of problems with the drug cartels in Mexico. I want to know what we're more concerned with. Are we going to be sending more funding overseas, or are we going to be trying to strengthen our borders, or trying to take care of the things that are going on around here? Which one are we going to be looking at? What we looking at harder?
I don't know that there's a prioritization in regard to the specific that you suggested. I don't know that it's Mexico versus Afghanistan and Pakistan. I will say that I'm pleased with the fact that this administration is moving forward to try to reduce the troops in Iraq and to get us out of the situation as responsibly as we can and still maintain some stability in that country. I actually was opposed to the war, and at the time I began my run for Congress 13 months before I was elected, that was one of the highest orders of priority at the time, and what people wanted to see change on. Over the next 12 months, by the time I actually became elected, we had entered an economic crisis that didn't overshadow it, but we are holding on domestically. What I will say is that I'm very proud of the fact that this administration is continuing along the course of reducing our involvement in Iraq and providing the opportunity for the Iraqis to stand up for themselves and to take their future into their own hands. The Afghanistan-Pakistan dilemma is very complex, as I'm sure you know. The porous border between the two is partly to cause for the growth of insurgent groups, and the administration, I believe, is taking us now on a path there that should have been the path we took immediately following 9/11, where we went straight to the cause, straight to the place where Al-Qaeda has been fostering its growth and trying to engender more unrest through that growth. So I believe that there's no question we're going to continue to have a very, very strong emphasis on Afghanistan and Pakistan, and that we will undertake a path that is hopefully smart and tough. And smart meaning that we use carrots and sticks with both countries, and tough to say that we won't tolerate any expansion of those kinds of organizations that foster terrorism. Mexico, I think, is a separate issue, and obviously one in which we must be engaged with the government of Mexico in order to, again, strengthen the border and both reduce the source and also reduce the use, frankly, that causes it to be such a major problem, and we all have responsibility for that.
Let me take a quick shot. First of all, I want to remind everybody that the last two elections, 06 and 08, in large part revolved and turned on this whole war in Iraq thing, as you know. And one of the things that happened, I think one of the reasons that the Democrats won the Congress, both House and Senate, in 2006, large part was because of the Iraq war. And part of the reason that the Democrats didn't have great popularity a year and a half, 2 years later is because of their inability to force Bush to get out of Iraq. So I think it needs to be said, first of all, that the president is the chief architect of our foreign policy, more so than most of the other issues that we've discussed, Representative Kosmas and I have discussed here today. And he has the experts, he has the intelligence team, the national security team, the State Department team, the Defense Department team, all those folks who bring him the information to help him craft the foreign policy of this country. And there is no doubt in my mind that President Obama wants to move quickly to get our people out of Iraq, out of the Middle East. He obviously now knows that we got a serious problem back in Afghanistan, where this all started with the Taliban, and it was going to shift some troops over there. But honestly, also the events of September and October with the financial meltdown crisis, the financial institutions meltdown, and the economic crisis, have diverted a lot of the attention of the administration, and now that's their number one focus, is to make sure that we have the ability to deal with these problems. So we have to get this economy back on track. But I think, I mean, obviously Representative Kosmas is right. You will see this country move out of Iraq, probably focus more in Afghanistan. We know we have to deal with the Mexican drug cartel problem. It's all part of the immigration issue, which this president has to deal with sooner or later. I've heard him say on numerous occasions that he wants to do all those fix all those problems while he's got the political capital to do it. So I think you'll see him move on all of those things as time moves on.
And with that, we'll have to end this panel because our 50 minutes has flown by. Please join me in thanking our distinguished congressional representatives.